Before we get to your scheduled video, please remember that likes and comments tell YouTube to promote our work to other people, and subscribing to the channel tells you when something new drops. You can also head to the link tree in the description to peruse my books, join us on Discord, or support us on Patreon. You can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling and Violent Profiles early, as well as a load of other treats. Even just $1 a month earns you a name drop for being cool. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Greetings and salutations, fellow dead angels. It is I, Eric J. Chucci, joined as always by the boy.
Hey!
This is the Two Nerds podcast. Before we get into all of the other stuff,
And there's much.
we need to talk about what's crumpin'.
What is crump?
What's crumpin' with you, my guy? What's happened in the last 7 days?
Last 7 days, got a new computer. That's still within the last 7 days, isn't it?
I believe we talked about it in the last podcast, but yeah.
Oh, last episode of Journey of Wrestling. New series, not out yet.
No, I think we recorded,
Did we?
yeah.
Oh. So no, I guess. Then... Work.
You had a free Friday this week. Do you remember what you did with that?
Bunch of errands and, productive stuff.
Not productivity. We really didn't do much. I mostly had a lot of mental breakdowns and played some Civ on my shiny new computer.
I played some Marvel Rivals.
Yeah, we've been playing a little Marvel
Rivals.
Rivals.
Played some tabletop RPG.
Of course,
that
is
was
a weekly.
fun.
Mm-hmm. I myself have been working as well. Played a little bit of Warframe, which I've been doing a lot lately. That's basically what's been crumping with me. Nothing dramatic this week. We were both very busy. So yeah, let's talk about who's cool.
Well, who's cool?
That's going to be Passion Killer 711, DG, Destrucity KTL, Thomas Austin Jr., whose name I'm not mispronouncing, unlike some people on this podcast, Kitty Holbrook.
Do I mispronounce his name?
Nah, you flubbed it a week or two ago, and he commented about it, and I didn't realize, because, you know, we do this,
what did I call him?
You just stumbled over your lips. It was like Thomas Austin Jr., something like that. Anyway, Drake Starstorm, you really threw me for a loop with this interjection.
You got a list?
It's partially my fault. I understand that. I feel like this should be... Is this on the tip of your tongue? Did I already say that one?
I don't know, brother.
You're going to make me... I'm opening it. I'm doing the thing.
This is... I bear if you open it... If you open it every time, then it's easy.
I'm going to open you every time.
That's weird.
Drake Starstorm, Thomas Austin Jr., Kitty Holbrook, DG, Destrucity KTL, Passion Killer 711, and of course our trash elite, Rob, and a guy from Ohio for whom this podcast is. He used his Patreon buying power to purchase us watching Snowpiercer, or as he called it, Chris Evans and the Allegory Train.
And such a great title that is. 1 second, Thomas Austin Jr. There, you can take that and use that whenever you need.
Well, you even fixed it then, and I just got confused. I thought maybe it was Tomas. I didn't know. Or the junior was like JR, and I somehow missed that this whole time.
Who knows?
But it wasn't.
But Snowpiercer. Chris Evans in the Allegory Train is the exact correct title for this movie.
Let's do a spoiler-free review, because I think really talking about this movie intrinsically begs spoilers. And I know that's something we often say, and then we still kind of skirt around things. I don't know that we're going to hear. So if you want to see Snowpiercer, let's give you some time to like, comment, subscribe, and pause or mute the podcast.
Tell us what's crumping with you in the comments.
Yeah, let us know what's crumping. And then come back and tell us what you thought of Snowpiercer and listen to the rest of the show. So what's your spoiler-free review, my friend?
Spoiler-free review of Snowpiercer. This was a fun sci-fi movie, and what I would call a good but reluctant action movie.
I don't think this was a film for me, but I think, apart from a couple minor quibbles, it was well made. I don't know if I'm as enthusiastic about some of the words you used, but I generally follow your assessment.
So spoilers?
Spoilers. So, if you haven't seen Snowpiercer and you just don't care about spoilers, the environment is ice-flavored fucked. They tried to combat global warming by shooting ice into the clouds, and now we're in super ice mode and everything is dead because of ice.
It's the day after tomorrow. The ice has come. It has chased you through the library, and now it's everywhere.
The entire movie takes place on a super cool bullet train that goes around the whole world in a period of 365 days. And the people within it who are, as we are aware, the last of humanity. Some of the people have nice, good, rich lives at the front of the train. Some of the people have bad, shitty, poor lives at the back of the train. Some people in the middle of the train really love fish.
I liked this. I want to get it right out front, because I'm going to say some shit that's going to sound mean. But
we got to do the compliment sandwich. When I'm nitpicky, I have to do.
It is... I liked this movie. I had a great time watching it. It was fun. It was... I used the phrase reluctant action movie earlier because it has cool action scenes, but the movie really doesn't want you to be enjoying the action scenes. It kind of goes out of its way to make them tense and uncomfortable and hard to follow.
This film has the weirdest shaky cam I've ever seen, in that it is just, in most action scenes, gently wobbling from side to side. Now, there are some action scenes where it is the typical competent shaky cam. Your mileage on the quality of that may vary, but it looks like how that usually looks.
There are some action scenes where it's not shaky cam at all, and they have a very slow classical music playing instead. And there are some action scenes where it's a POV hardcore Henry from a fish cultist killing a bunch of back-of-train people. I don't think there's a single action scene in this movie that wants you to be enjoying watching it. And I think that's a very interesting... because this was clearly done intentionally. I think it's a very interesting version of a thing that I don't like in video games that is much better in a movie because I'm with the movie for a lot less time. There's a thing in video games I will have decried on the podcast before and will again in the future, which is the video game having the goddamn temerity to punish me for trying to play it.
Well, so that's something in video games that's kind of... This movie isn't punishing you for trying to watch it. It has a message and a story to tell. But in video games, you're often given binary or non-existent choices, or only two options between a choice that are both bad. And then the video game tells you and browbeats you what a bad person you are for making the choice they forced you to make.
That's usually what I mean
right.
when I talk about that. This movie wants you to not be happy or comfortable when there's violence happening, because the characters on screen wouldn't be happy or comfortable with that, so why should you be?
You could have stopped at comfortable. This movie does not want you to be happy or comfortable.
I'm trying to think if there's any scene that's just nice. I don't think so.
No. So, and it's not inherently bad for a movie to be downbeat. And there's a lot of media I really enjoy that is very downbeat or bittersweet or even tragic. This movie, I have a sixth sense, if you will, about when people are trying to trick me. And it twigged so hard not 15 minutes into this film.
Much earlier than that. You watched maybe 5 minutes of this film, and then you got the look on your face that says, no, I'm being trolled and I don't like it. And then the first commercial break on Netflix happened, and you said, I feel like I'm being tricked. But I could recognize the look on your face well before you said it out loud.
I was trying to be generous and not overestimate my own abilities. So, you know, the principal good guy characters in this film are likable fellow Chris Evans and John Hurt, and we do love Broom in this household, or Mr. Ollivander if you're
that particular
part of that
guy.
fandom.
Yeah.
So they give off buy-in because of who the actors are. You want to support them. We had a similar conversation when we watched Ocean's 11 for one of our patrons. I don't remember which one. I think it's the same guy who's doing the next Patreon sponsored review, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
But if the actor is somebody that you like, you're going to have more buy-in to watch the movie and be behind them, even if the movie doesn't supply you with a reason to be behind them. I like Chris Evans just fine, but I don't like Chris Evans that much to just trust his character implicitly, especially when they're, like, neatly dodging anything that would be character establishment.
And to be fair, I know people who have no reason to give a shit about Chris Evans because they don't give a shit about Marvel movies, who like this movie quite a bit.
He was in, what was that?
Not
Bad
Another
Guys,
Teen Movie?
The Crappy Guys?
Yes, that's
whatever it was called. That was a DC Vertigo, I think. So that's completely different.
But, yeah.
I don't just root for the good guy for no reason. And I don't say that to be edgy, but, like, you gotta... A movie isn't good if the good guy just does things and you're like, oh, the good guy did stuff, and it's a guy I kind of assumed to be the good guy and he did it. I'm already on his side. Like, most films, most stories have some sort of establishment to be like, why do we like this guy?
And this movie does as well, you just didn't give a shit about it.
Well, I might have except for two things. Thing number one, they cast a shadow of doubt. So, I believe the establishing you're talking about is how the people from the front of the train come to the back of the train and act like real assholes.
Well, it's actually most of that sequence. So, I would say the thing that's intended to get you on Curtis, the character who Chris Evans plays, on his side, is, the very start of the movie, the people from the front of the train show up, and they're acting like real dickheads. And then they do some bad shit, and then Chris Evans goes through his community. Curtis goes through his community and is clearly a leader and someone who is looked up to, and he is looking after people. He is checking in on them. He is asking how they are doing. He is checking up on people. He is also, side note, trying to figure out who has a secret hidden message food block, but he is doing it whilst checking in on his people. There is a bit of a kerfuffle around the little kid who has the special food block they need. And Chris Evans is able to emotionally connect with this kid and, like, it is a humanizing moment where he is talking to someone, where he is talking to, like, a small child, and it is very clear that he is someone who is respected, who is loved, who is a leader in this community. That is all intended to get you on his side. You just don't give a shit about any of that.
It just does. There's just this air of... I don't know what to call it exactly. Not quite menace, but it's specific things left unsaid. It's lying by omission. That seems like a bit of a hard thing to say, but, like, they're obviously skipping certain things.
And the movie is doing that because it's in service of reveals later in the movie.
Sure, absolutely. But, like, I don't have faith in this character. There's a lot of people who are charismatic, good with those within their group, leaders of their community, who are awful human beings. Some of them dress like ghosts.
This is not a spoiler-free section of the show. Fair warning. At the end, it turns out that Curtis is one of those.
Which, the stuff he did was, like...
Bad,
but, like, in the circumstances...
Like, look, there are ameliorating circumstances, certainly, but... Baby eating is bad. Hot take on the Two Nerds podcast. Eating babies? Bad.
I'm going to have to edit this out. I don't want to lose our baby eating demographic. It was a fucked up thing to do, and they did make a good job of him embellishing and very much focusing on the fact that it was his fun, favorite task back in his baby eating days. Like, they wanted to make sure you knew this guy was not a good guy. He had to make some bad, rough decisions, and he went with the easiest of the bad, rough decisions.
And he's been trying to be a good guy since, but he never really did what he felt would atone for the terrible shit he done did.
Honestly, if they had told me up front, I'm going to let the joke hit, that he was trying to atone from being a baby eater, or that he was trying to atone for something, I maybe would have felt a little bit more inclined to follow him on this journey.
And they kind of imply it.
They do. It's pretty softly. He suggests that he had a bad past. It's the back of the train in general that I don't trust so much, because they're, obviously, for good reasons, unhinged. So it begs the question, why are these people in the back of the train? Is it just regular classism? Or, like, are they all the murderers? And you go to the back of the train because you did the murders, we can't have you at the front of the train, where people are trying to not be murdered.
Turns out they're unhinged because everyone on the fucking train is unhinged.
Yeah.
It's a train full of crazy people.
It's just a train full of crazy people. At one point during the end of the film, I was like, did he just select for crazy people to be on his train? Is that what happened?
And then the leader of the train people, the train conductor, head trainsman, literally says, everyone on this train is crazy. You kind of have to be crazy. We want crazy people because that's how you got to survive.
I don't know if he means that literally or is like, you got to be crazy to work here, you know.
Given the fact that he was currently crouching on his own work table, feverishly cleaning an already clean bolt as he said it, I feel like it's intended to be a specific thing.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, the long story short, the guys at the back of the train go to the front of the train to take over and bring justice to the people. Equality.
They have a revolt, and then terrible.
I'm sorry. The other reason I didn't 100% trust the people at the back of the train is that the person from the front of the train who came in to be an illustrative villain was way more charismatic than anyone except maybe John Hurt, and he was mostly pretty mum on the subject.
Which is hilarious because Tilda Swinton is the person you're talking about.
Yes.
And she gives the most awkward, bumbling, non-charismatic performance intentionally I have ever seen Tilda Swinton do. She is playing a fuck-up. A middle manager who doesn't know how to give a proper speech, fumbles over her words, and is not charismatic.
Maybe it's just the algorithm I'm on, but I felt more bless than I did. What a loser.
Well, it's just, I love that choice because that's a great thing for that character to be.
Sure. And, I mean, she's obviously a villain, but it's such a well-played villain. I am more behind her than I am, Chris, I love you, but generic man.
I like the ultimate confirmation that everyone on the train is supposed to be crazy, because everyone on this train is a fucking nightmare psychopath. And the movie is insane, and it starts out quietly insane in that, you know, all of the people around you are crazy, but they're very put upon. A boot is on their neck. People act weird in that scenario. But as you get further forward, everyone is still super crazy and doing wacky, crazy bullshit. So, like, the movie gets weirder and crazier the further forward on the train you go, as the people you see are closer and closer to everyday people, and are still just as crazy,
if not worse.
Much crazier.
I was not expecting what this movie was, and I also think that's part of my rough reaction to it. You know, you buy the ticket, you see the ride, you take the ride. It's what I try to usually do, even when I walk into something not being in the best mood. I want to evaluate it on its terms and not try to bring my baggage into the day. Now, we all can't help that, you know. I'm not infallible.
Striving for that is good. Not meeting it is human.
Sure. But I thought this was going to be a dour action film about the downtrodden overcoming adversity until adversity got too hard. And that is the moral of the story, is that the boot will always be there, you cannot win. That is what I assumed based on everything I've seen of Snowpiercer.
You assumed it was like a 1984 style thing.
Yeah.
Imagine a boot pressing on a face forever.
Yeah. But like with more action. And then we got to the scene where the balaclava blind fishmen, the men who love fish, those aren't men that are fish. Everybody,
and they don't love fish, they just have a fish. Singular. One.
Which makes it even weirder, honestly. It was just the thing that stood out about them is that they were dressed for fish murder, except for their weird balaclavas that showed only their mouths. Some of them had eyes, but most of them were blind. And then they put on night vision goggles over top of their non-eyes, which just led to more questions. But yeah, they open the door, and there's a bunch of fish guys, and one of them holds up a fish, and he
ceremonially starts to, but does not complete, gutting the fish.
And he hands it off to some other guy, and all of the revolutionaries wait patiently while he does this before they attack.
Well, because they got axes.
Yeah, I just don't...
Why would you run into that before you got
I would shut the door. I would be like, oh, we got to reevaluate this situation.
Well, you haven't been spent 17 years being pressed upon in the food block tunnel.
So that's one of the points, and the other point I was not quite ready for is that one of the characters is a clairvoyant.
It's implied.
It's implied really heavily, and he asks her, I guess you're a clairvoyant, or something like that.
And she just kind of goes,
don't go in the door where all the evil fishmen are, and there they are in the door.
Yeah.
And then she does that several other times throughout the movie.
Look, either she's a clairvoyant,
or she's genre savvy. She read the script.
Yeah, or she read the script, maybe. Or, like, she's real lucky. But that is a thing that exists in this movie and is not otherwise remarked upon.
Now, in the middle of the Fishman fight, they cross over a delicate bridge, which signifies New Year's Day, and everybody stops, and the fishmen sing their special New Year's Day song.
And everyone stops and, like, sits down next to each other. These people were murdering each other 2 seconds ago. So that none of them rock the train too much while they go over the delicate bridge so they don't derail the train. And I love this scene.
I mean, it's good, you know, looking back, I can go, oh, that was fun, that was good world building, there's a lot going on there. But when I thought I was going to watch a dour action film...
And then there's the special fish gutting and the New Year's Day ritual.
Yeah, I wasn't ready.
Got to the classroom.
The classroom was kind of the point where I went, okay, these people are crazy. That's what's going on here. I understand now. As I said it around that next commercial break after the classroom, if this film had been starring Nicolas Cage, I would have been prepared for all of this. That would have been sort of an expectation. I would have gone, and now it's gone very weird. Wonderful. I just wasn't ready for it, and I had to struggle with that. It was a lot. But, like, looking back and taking it all in, again, I don't know that it was a movie for me. This is not the first time I've heard this kind of story, so it doesn't have that impact of, whoa, they're right, you know. I mean, they are, but, like, I'm not blown away by that. The way I would have been if I had seen this movie when I was in my teens or 20s. You know, when I was a little more susceptible to this kind of thing. And also, I don't want to watch this sad movie that makes me upset and makes me go, cool. That sure did occur, and now my feelings are hurt. But, was it a well-done film? Did it execute on the premise very wonderfully? Yes, I think so. There were a bunch of really great performances. Some twists that feel a little hacky, but honestly, I think they pulled them off.
I think there was one good twist and one bad twist in this movie.
Speak to that.
The good twist is the fact that even though it is actually foreshadowed, it's still a twist because Curtis, Chris Evans' character, being a real bad dude back in the day, is a twist because he says at the beginning of the movie, I'm not the guy he thinks I am. I'm not a saint or whatever he says. But like every fucking action movie hero says that.
Yeah,
very few of them secretly ate babies.
Yeah.
So that's a good twist because it's clearly they've spent the whole movie building up like the whole backstory, and then he lays it out in this big monologue, and he's clearly very affected, and it's excellently acted by Chris Evans.
I agree.
And this is him. He's unburdening his soul to this guy he met a day ago, and it's a very honest, emotionally honest moment, and a good reveal, if not a twist. The bad quote unquote twist is also something that was incredibly obvious, the most obvious possible thing to happen, which is that John Hurt and head of Train Man, the train leader, the train conductor, the trainsman, Mr. Conductor, were secretly in cahoots, perhaps. It's pretty well confirmed, but we don't get a confirmation from John Hurt's character. He's already dead. But they were in cahoots the whole time, and the whole rebellion was just a eugenics project to lower the population of the back of the train.
And to get Chris Evans to the front to take over the train.
Yeah.
There's a lot of imagery and style that is evocative of Willy Wonka. in this film that I pointed out at the time, and you said you think that might be intentional. And it does, in that sense, have the great glass elevator moment of, you made it, Charlie. You were the goodest one.
You get the chocolate factory, but in this case, the chocolate factory is the horror machine run on baby tears.
They're 5-year-olds.
That's true. They are 5-year-old. They grind 5-year-olds in the gears of their machine to keep it running. I again state, Snowpiercer is not what I would consider a subtle movie. It's not a subtle allegory. But I don't think it's a bad one. The bit with John Hurt and the Mr. Conductor secretly being in cahoots, that was hacky. Like, that was something I called pretty much the second I saw John Hurt's character and realized, his place in the narrative. And I don't like that I was able to do that. That's a very hacky twist. Yes, I get it. Systems of power are bad. Okay, that's fine.
I mean, yeah, like that's a takeaway I have as well. I don't think it was that bad because at least it made sense for Chris Evans to be absolutely dumbstruck by the reveal of what his whole life has been. A lot of times you get to that point and the villain says, like, I'm your uncle, and the hero stands there like, no, you couldn't be. I have to think about this.
Chris Evans is instead fucking flabbergasted. He's struck out of loop. He's in space for the next 10 minutes of movie.
And it feels valid.
Yeah,
as he's like wrestling with these concepts.
This is a man who he saw cut off his own arm to save the life of one small child. And it turns out that guy was in cahoots with the guy who shoves 5-year-olds into the engine the whole time. That's completely... That makes no fucking sense. So it makes sense that Chris Evans is baffled.
Well, I mean, everyone on the train's crazy, so,
They're all crazy bastards.
And hey, we're using crazy a lot around here. We care about mental health. If you feel like you might build a eugenics train, don't. And also, get some help.
Call somebody.
Yeah.
Talk to a friend.
Yeah, talk to a friend and be like, hey, buddy, should I build the eugenics train? And if he says yes...
That's not your friend.
No. That guy wants to be at the top of the train while you're at the back of the train. That's what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Or he wants to be at the back of the train and he needs even more help. Seek therapy.
Y'all both call a third friend.
They have one. You can play Stardew Valley while you talk to a therapist now. I think that's a good version. But yeah, it's a struggle. I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm glad I watched this, and I'd have a hard time recommending it to all but a very specific kind of person. But I don't think it was bad by any stretch. I think this is a well-made movie that just wasn't for me. Usually when I say that, it's like a children's product, right? Where it's just not... And it's similar problems. These are stories I've seen before. You're not doing anything that novel. It's well executed, but I don't need to see this. I've done seen it. I don't need to hear Mary Had a Little Lamb again. I've moved beyond that. Not to say that this is puerile, because it's this is actually quite, makes you think kind of content. It's showing, it's casting a lens on some truths that not everybody has woken up to and accepted or wanted to fight against or what have you. It's just not novel to me.
I, on the other hand, would absolutely recommend this film. It was fun. It's a wild ride. It's not exactly the happiest movie I've ever watched, but I don't think it was depressing.
You know what else I will say? It was a 2-hour movie, and lately I've been mostly comically bemoaning that movies aren't 90 minutes anymore. I'm just tired and I have places to be and staring off into the middle distance to do. It used all of its 2 hours. I don't think anything was really wasted here.
No, there were no scenes that you could cut without losing something important from the film.
Yeah, up to and including the absolutely baffling, classroom scenes, some of the fight scenes, the steam room stuff.
I think maybe the scene where they're shooting at each other from across the train to no purpose might be cuttable.
I think it's like more of that sediment to show how absolutely reckless,
unhinged
everybody all of these people are. Yeah. I mean, it's probably the least important scene. I do want to make one more nitpick, if I can, if you don't mind.
By all means, nitpick away.
And then I'll give you the end of the show to give some closing thoughts. Early on, they find out their protein paste. They look it in the vat, and it's made of bugs. And
roaches, specifically.
Chris Evans is horrified by this. Chris Evans, the baby eater, is horrified by this. My homie should have looked in there and been like, oh, thank God it's not babies.
It's roaches. It's only roaches, guys. We're all good. It's roaches.
That's just, like, that's some out of touch. I get why it's there. Most people would be like, ew, bugs. And no, I don't want to eat, I don't want to pick up a bug off the ground and eat that. But if you...
Reconstituted roach paste block isn't a thing I want to eat either. But, like, considering where this particular character has been in his history, he should have been relieved. Imagine how much more interesting that scene is if he looks in and there's his face shows relief. He's like, oh, does the thank God face and looks relieved, and then it cuts in and it's the exact same shot of horrifying roach mill. You
can even have a second person peep in there and be like, ew. I think the Irish guy was still around at that point, and he was young, so he wasn't around for those dark times.
Sean from Red Dead Redemption 2 was still alive.
Now, I would try the roach paste. I'm curious.
I wouldn't. Other bugs, maybe, yes. Cricket paste, fine. Roaches
they
are gross.
burned up them roaches real good. I think the worst parts of it are probably gone. And they're cleaner bugs than most people think.
I don't know that I can do better than that, bud. End the podcast.